Sam Seder here. This is the live broadcast of the Majority Report. And as you probably have heard, there's a bit of a YouTube apocalypse that has been going on. Many news and politics channels have lost their advertising because of an algorithm that Google has implemented as a function of ads showing up on hate-filled channels. Well, we got caught up in that, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved. So we need your help. You've probably heard from other channels that they're asking people to donate to a Patreon site. We are asking the same so that we can operate this YouTube feed without a cost to us. I mean, we don't look at YouTube as a huge revenue maker for us, but we need your help so that we're not losing money on it. So head over to our Patreon site. Here is the URL. We need your help. Just a couple of bucks, $2-3 a month would really help us out. Thanks so much and enjoy the show. Hi, folks.
The first thing you ever felt, exciting under your belt, to a place that smothers children, cuts the space between two lives. I've seen you working, wasted and gray. You've got a delicate heart, and listen, you would be smart to keep yourself in a world of mothers, sisters, daughters, and wives.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder. It's time to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, May 11th, 2017. My name is Sam Seder. This is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live. Steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America. Downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Marcy Wheeler of Empty Wheel. On the Yates hearings. On the Comey firing. On the Flynn subpoenaing. On the Kushner-Kushnering. Also on the program today, Trump to launch a fraudulent voter fraud commission. Dems ramp up effort for an independent prosecutor. The acting FBI director testifying on the Hill today. And Trump money laundering documents head over to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Meanwhile, the head of the Census Bureau is leaving. How will that impact the 2020 redistricting? And all that and more as we prime the pump this Thursday. I just made that up.
Whoa.
Priming the pump.
I mean, lacking sleep, but not ideas.
No, it just came into my head. We're going to prime the pump here.
Just creative like that.
Yeah. The idea that Donald Trump could have thought that he made up those words is pretty stunning, because he clearly has never used any type of like chainsaw or snowblower or anything where you actually literally do prime the pump.
Prime the pump. It's what Ivanka does to me every night. What's your problem?
But he also has probably had no conversations with anybody that he's ever listened. I mean, what? The guy's a lunatic, above all else. but and amusing at moments. So that's, I guess, thank heavens for that.
That actually sounds like a good obituary.
So
lunatic above
obviously
all else.
we're loaded up with we're talking to Marcy Wheeler. We're focused today, as is many people, on the sort of the state of our government, of the Justice Department. I mean, here's the thing. I don't know who they're going to bring in, but there's a whole raft of issues aside from Donald Trump and his associates' relationship with money laundering, with Russian, whatever it is, that, the head of the FBI is in charge of. Now, granted, we have a head of the DOJ who is a unreconstructed racist, and perhaps even more importantly than what's in his, what he is personally, who is hell-bent on allowing for racist policies.
He's functionally racist.
Yes. In police departments, from disenfranchising people's right to vote. The list would go on. Having an FBI director who is a team player, as it were, is problematic, to say the least, even outside of these other issues. But so we're going to spend some time on that today. I had a long talk with Marcy Wheeler just about 20 minutes ago. But before we get there, what is also important, and really, in many respects, the value of these ongoing investigations, in addition to hopefully leading to a place where Donald Trump doesn't have the ability to run our country, and any of his associates don't either. But it also makes it harder for Paul Ryan et al. To pursue their agenda of stripping people of their health care, of imposing austerity for the sake of tax cuts to the very wealthy. So anything that can contribute to that, I think, is a good thing. But there'll be no replacement for this type of work by voters. This is a video of a town hall in New Jersey's 3rd District, where a man tells Republican Tom MacArthur, gives him a little piece of his mind. Remember, MacArthur is the guy from New Jersey who fashioned the so-called compromise, put in the extra $8 billion for the risk pools, which were useless, and the waivers, which again basically allows states to get rid of all of the patient protections, all of the regulation that makes health insurance. And not only is it a waiver for one state, it's going to allow large group insurers, employers, to basically adopt a state that's not theirs to go for the lowest bar that would qualify health insurance. In other words, Alabama, I don't know why I pick on Alabama, although I think it's a pretty good bet.
I mean, yeah.
Imagine if Alabama said that, well, we're selling car insurance that does not provide you any liability if you hit anybody, does not provide you with anything if someone hits you, has a massive deductible, and then will only pay 2/3 of the replacement of any of the parts of your car. We still call it car insurance. And oh, by the way, out-of-state people, employers, can buy this insurance, even though in their state they actually require certain minimums for what car insurance is. It would be a problem. That's what we're looking at here. But here is a gentleman who, and this is a district, to be fair, a section, I should say, of Tom MacArthur's district that he did not get a lot of votes But this anger, I think, is going to resonate outside of this district.
And then suddenly we got the MacArthur Amendment. Congratulations. You're in history now. You're in the national spotlight. And that's one thing I want to talk about, the national spotlight. You keep talking about all the constituents that you have to adhere to. And over in this county, they believe one thing, and over in this county, they believe another thing. And you're trying to thread that needle. Well, you haven't threaded it at all. Everyone that is going to be losing from this, you have not addressed. You have not addressed it properly. You have not addressed it fully. You have ignored us. I have called your office incessantly, and I get people who don't know what's going on. I don't get any return phone calls. If I ever fax or email, I get a form letter that informs me about what I contacted you about and why you can't do anything about it, because it's still in committee. You look forward to taking my opinions into consideration. You have not taken my opinions into consideration. Too complicated. It's not going to get done in months. 3 weeks. I don't understand.
What's your question?
Oh, we haven't even begun. I'm not done with you yet. I got the mic, and I'm not going anywhere. Turn off the power. I got a very loud voice. This ain't over yet. My wife was diagnosed with cancer when she was 40 years old. She beat it, but every day, she lives with it. She thinks about it. Every pain, every new something going on somewhere, is it coming back? Is this cancer? Do I have it again? Is it going to kill me this time? Is it going to take me away from my children? Speaking of which, my children both have pre-existing conditions from birth. One cardiac, one thyroid. You have been the single greatest threat to my family in the entire world.
I mean, he goes on, imagine, and it's probably true. I mean, if you've got 2 kids with pre-existing conditions and a mother who is a survivor of cancer, and you're looking across at the guy who's basically going to make it impossible for you to get health insurance to cover your family. In the event that you lose your job, it would be virtually impossible. 50% of bankruptcies are going to return. Personal bankruptcies are going to return. That's probably not hyperbole at all. And this has got to keep up. I mean, the Trump stuff is, I think, more compelling from people. On some level, it's more dramatic. But the value of it is to weaken the Republicans' ability to impose their agenda, which is at, their strength, their ability to do that is really about as high as it gets, right? I guess theoretically, if they had filibuster proof in the Senate, but nevertheless, this is important stuff to push back on. So if you have the opportunity to go to a town hall, and I think only about 20 of them, 20 Republicans, I think, are scheduled to have their town halls, and maybe it'll be less over this week and a half. That
Not looking too good.
Yeah, no, I would. If I was a Republican, I would be hiding in the bushes. I'd be pulling a Sean Spicer.
I don't want to do any town hall. Sam, Republican Congressman. I voted against their pre-existing conditions. Now they're saying
There's going to be
awful things.
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of things like where, they do it via closed caption,
Totally.
closed circuit TV. Like the guy's actually going to be in the back room on a.
What was actually great was yesterday we were on Wednesday or Tuesday we played one with a guy in Iowa who did all this effort to make sure that nobody from out of his district showed up. And first he had a temper tantrum with a reporter who was like, well, if you'll take contributions outside of your district, why can't you take questions? And he ripped his mic off and walked out. And then we played from the town hall, which he screened heavily. And this woman came up to him and was like, basically, like, why are you going to F people with pre-existing conditions? So it didn't work.
You can't
But
run.
It was pretty funny.
Funny, but not as funny, Michael,
Yes.
as CISO.
Transition.
CISO has a library of stand-up television and original content that provides streaming laughs up to 1.7 megabarrels. You know, as in like a barrel of laughs.
Barrel. Yeah, I get it.
You know. With CISO, you also get unlimited access to next day late night, British cult comedy, stand-up specials, and binge-worthy classics like all 42 seasons of SNL and the entire Monty Python catalog. It's all on demand. It's all ad-free. So whatever makes you laugh, CISO has something in its library just for you, and there's new content added all the time. This month, you can watch the UK imports like The Darkest Universe and Steve Coogan's Saxondale. Yes.
Sounds good.
Are you ready for the punchline?
I like Coogan. Yes. What is it?
I mean, this isn't hilarious, but maybe if I deliver it in a funny way.
Do it.
You can access CISO anytime, anywhere, on almost any device, including iOS, Android, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Windows, or Xbox One. And this is where I do the callback for $3.99 per month. No joke.
You know what? Sometimes comedy's just truth-telling.
Exactly. It's funny because it's true.
Exactly.
$3.99, less than $4 a month. That's worth one Monty Python viewing. Just go to CISO, that's SEESO.com right now. Sign up for 2 weeks free using the promo code MAJORITY at checkout. That's CISO.com, spelled SEESO.com, promo code MAJORITY. CISO.com, promo code MAJORITY. You will laugh, people.
It's true.
You will laugh. All right, we're going to take a quick break. I just spoke to Marcy Wheeler about half an hour ago, and we'll go to the take a break, and we'll go to that interview. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Marcy Wheeler. She is the proprietor and one of the posters at emptywheel.net. Marcy, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
So let's start with, I guess, the latest on Comey and work backwards. We have now, it is clear, and I don't know if there was really a lot of controversy about this when it was first announced, but it's clear that the stories we were getting as to what prompted Comey's firing were not true.
Donald Trump really didn't much care about the way Jim Comey treated Hillary Clinton in the last days of the election that led him to win the election.
In fact, Rod Rosenstein apparently threatened to resign when he realized that his letter, which was requested of him to get his perspective on Comey's behavior, which, frankly, I thought the letter was a fairly accurate assessment of Comey's behavior. But he did not understand that it would be the basis of Comey's firing. So working back from that, do we have a sense of why the timing took place now?
I think I'm as interested in the way in which Sally Yates's testimony precipitated the firing as anything else. Sally Yates and, frankly, James Clapper. Because Sally Yates's testimony wasn't as Sally Yates, for listeners, is former Deputy Attorney General. She testified on Monday how on January 26th, she went to the White House and said, your national security advisor has some serious problems. And at first, the White House was like, why are you intervening? And she was like, well, because we think he's susceptible to Russian blackmail. And then she went on the 27th and said, here, you really need to take this seriously. Then they threw the Muslim ban at her. And then the following week, they said, we want to see the intelligence behind this risk of blackmail that our national security advisor is susceptible to. And then they fired her. And that was interesting for a couple of reasons. My favorite part of that testimony, or one of the most interesting comments that a senator made, was one that Al Franken made. Because one of the questions, and Adam Schiff, he's the head of the Democratic ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, has been saying for a long time, Sally Yates is the one who can explain why there was a delay between her alerting the White House on January 26th and them waiting 18 days to fire Mike Flynn and letting him meet with all these heads of state and conduct all sorts of secret business in the interim. And Franken sort of said, well, maybe the reason he delayed, maybe the reason Trump delayed in firing his national security advisor, Mike Flynn, who had been having these compromising conversations with the Russians, is because if he admitted that Flynn needed to be fired, then the other people who had had conversations they were trying to hide with Sergei Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, and other Russians, then they might have to be fired. Then we might have to admit that they might be criminally liable for these conversations with the Russians as well. And that's when you get into interesting territory. One, because the two other big people on the list of Trump associates who hid conversations with the Russians are, one, Jeff Sessions, who lied to Al Franken in his confirmation hearing about whether he had had any conversations with the Russians, and even more interesting, Jared Kushner, right? So he was involved in some of those same conversations with Mike Flynn, with Sergei Kislyak, and then subsequently met with the head of a Russian bank that's sanctioned, that is being sanctioned for the invasion of Ukraine, and that there are these open questions about whether the bank was talking about funding the Kushner industries that are short on cash, and that would be, Trump has no loyalty to anybody. He demands absolute loyalty from other people, but he has no loyalty to anybody except his family. And if his son-in-law, if the father of three of his grandchildren is going to end up being targeted by this investigation, he's going to start acting nuts.
And so the idea was, so do you think that, so in that scenario, and again, we're just speculating, because all, what else can we do at this point in terms of looking at this? But based upon...
Right, but what is not speculative is that Kushner had more sensitive meetings. There's no allegation that Kushner was paid by Russians, although there is an allegation that he, or actually maybe one of the Trump sons, or maybe both, I forget. But there's no allegation that he was paid by the Russians, but he didn't do any vetting process. At least Flynn, we've got a long history of what he was doing for DIA.
Right.
Kushner, we don't know. And so that is the case, that he did not come forward with any of these conversations he was having with Russians. And that's not speculative. That is a problem. And he's already a walking conflict, because he's got his own business conflicts, Ivanka's business conflicts. Why the heck do we have the son-in-law of the president in, this quasi chief of staff role?
Yeah. So do you think Trump? Do you think Trump knew about Flynn's actions prior? The thing that I found interesting about the Sally Yates testimony was what they were doing on that second day. Obviously, right, Don McGahn goes back and reports to Trump after the first day and says, either here's a revelation for you, Michael Flynn's been up to this, or here's a revelation for you, Sally Yates knows that Michael Flynn has been up to this, right? We don't know how much Trump knew about Michael Flynn, but it seems like the whole second day was just about feeling out Sally Yates. How far are you going to take this? Why are you asking us about this? What is your role in this situation? And
then boom, 2 days later, she's fired.
Right, because they realize, oh, your role in this situation is you're not on Team Trump. You're on, maybe just not on Team Trump. You're just, out there doing your job, and that's problematic.
Right, and she was doing her job there, which is, I mean, that was my favorite line from the entire testimony when she explained to Klobuchar, it's like, I just did my job. Like, that's
Right.
what I was supposed to do. She was talking about both the Muslim ban. Why did she refuse to enforce the Muslim ban? Well, very good reason, because she could not ask not prosecutors or civil attorneys to go to judges and say, well, don't worry about it. It's not a Muslim ban in spite of the fact that President Trump has said 100 times that it's about Muslims. You know, that was why she refused to enforce the Muslim ban. But the way in which they come, really, you know, she had no warning about the Muslim ban. She had no warning as acting attorney general that basically the White House did something. This hasn't been made enough of, but in the Muslim ban, the White House did something very akin to what Dick Cheney did in 2001 when he went to OLC to get things approved without going through the proper channels. He went to John Yoo to get something rubber stamped. And in the case of the Muslim ban, they didn't tell OLC the things they needed to tell them. I mean, that generally happens. Like, you go in and you say, hey, can we keep people out of the country, without saying we want to do it because the president has been on a tear against Muslims for 6 months and
Right.
got elected being, you know, a bigot.
So the OLC cannot make a proper assessment as to the legality of the law because they don't have all of the elements and the facts that went into the creation of the law.
Right.
So let me ask you this, too, about Sally Yates' testimony, if this struck you. We know that she was going to the White House because she saw the disparity between what the White House was saying Mike Pence was told, or what Mike Pence was saying he was told, and what Mike Flynn had actually done. So she said she was there, I think during the testimony, she said, I was there to let them know that he was lying, or she thought he was lying to Mike Pence, right? I mean, it's quite possible that just Mike Pence was telling a lie.
Right.
And we also know that Flynn must have lied to the FBI about his contacts because Flynn could have said, yeah, I know publicly we're not saying that I met with the Russians because we think it could be politically damaging. So this is just what we're doing. And if he had said that, right? I mean, if he had communicated to the FBI, maybe Sally Yates still would have gone over the White House to back it up. But if he had said, like, look, this is, we are meeting with the Russians. I have been sent by the president to meet by the Russians or whatnot because we're trying to create better relations. And we're just not saying it publicly because we just don't think the public is there yet. And this happens all the time. We have secret negotiations and, we did this with the Iran deal. We do this all the time. He must have said the opposite, essentially, to FBI investigators. Otherwise, Sally Yates would have no reason to believe that he had lied to Mike Pence and possibly to the president. So she wouldn't have gone over there. I mean, that was the blackmail thing. But she also was saying there was other underlying activities that she couldn't go into.
Yeah.
Give me your sense of what that distinction and how important that was.
Well, and I agree. I mean, there was a ton of stuff at the hearing that made it clear that Mike Flynn lied to the FBI. But the question is, what was the substance of Mike Flynn's multiple conversations with Sergei Kislyak, and to what degree was he helping? Was he delivering on promises to end sanctions? Right? To what degree was he saying on December 29th, don't worry about these new sanctions, we'll overturn them in 3 weeks? But the other interesting thing, Friday, there were these competing stories from Washington Post and the AP. I hope I get the AP attribution correct. And they revealed that one of the kind of non-crazy people in the administration was worried that Flynn wasn't taking Kislyak seriously enough. And he went to the CIA and said, hey, can we get the dossier on Kislyak so Flynn can I mean, the guy's an old spy. I don't know why Flynn would need this warning, but so that he can understand who he's dealing with. And in the AP version of that story, so that the dossier on this ambassador gets dumped into the SCIF, which is a place to put secure documents and keep them secure, and nothing's supposed to go in or out of them, right? It gets dumped into this SCIF, and that's what the Washington Post story says. The AP story says, oh, by the way, Trump associates were copying stuff and taking them out of the SCIF. Now, there was no allegation that it was that dossier, but those two stories together, to me, said, was Flynn sharing classified information with Sergei Kislyak? I mean, that was the question that they raised for me, because if you're copying stuff and taking it out of a SCIF, first of all, you're doing far more than Hillary Clinton was ever accused to do with her emails. So,
right.
We can go back to Flynn saying she should go to jail. But you're also, the reason you don't take stuff out of the SCIF is because then you can show these top secret documents to people who are not cleared to see them. And some of the people you might share them with are people who are foreign agents. So that is to my mind the kind of outside of where we might be talking here. But again, we know that and CIA was kind of weirded out that they were asked for only Sergei Kislyak's dossier. They turned it over. They were kind of like, WTF, mate. And so it is possible, for example, that Flynn did read it and said, hey, Sergei, they think you're a spy. Ha, let's get rid of these sanctions. That, obviously that would be troubling underlying behavior, right?
And there could be value, I guess, for Kislyak to see, what are the sources that the CIA uses when they're creating dossiers on folks like me. So let me ask you this about Flynn, which I still find sort of rather stunning. I mean, here he is. He was very high placed in the intelligence world, right, of our government at one point. Yet he seems to have no sense of what appear to me as a layperson without very much knowledge of this fairly basic capacities that our intelligence community has. Like the idea that they wouldn't be, it seems like it never occurred to Flynn that Kislyak would be monitored, right? Would be surveilled in any way. Do I have that right? And is that weird?
Or maybe they're so arrogant. The president has a great deal of authority to negate. Trump, let's be honest, we are, whatever else we are stuck with Trump, he's incompetent a lot of the stuff he does. Like if Dick Cheney were in this White House, the firing of Jim Comey would be so much better executed,
right,
that there wouldn't be this attention. So, we have that at least. But
if Flynn was confident that he would never be held to account, he would need the confidence that Donald Trump would cover for him, right? In some way?
Right.
And
right.
Where does that confidence come from?
If he had compromising information, say, on his son-in-law, if Jared Kushner is in the mix here, and he was definitely in the mix in those meetings.
Right.
If Jared Kushner, if son-in-law is in the mix, then you've got a lot of leverage over dad-in-law. And I think, the other thing is that, one of the reasons Trump looks so incompetent is that he's just used to doing business the way businessmen and kind of a dodgy, mobbed-up business do business, which is, twist arms, push things, demand loyalty, fire. And I think that Trump works with that assumption that he will be able to demand the same kind of responsiveness in the federal government that he was running serially bankrupt, somewhat corrupt real estate business. And so I think that is where some of the arrogance comes from as well. You're right. I don't know what Flynn was thinking, but keep in mind, too, there were two allegations, at least one of which got to the Inspector General level, and which James Mattis, by the way, the Secretary of Defense, intervened on and made sure that Flynn did not face problems. Flynn had serial problems with dealing with classified information already. Like, if Flynn had been held accountable to the, say, Hillary Clinton standard, it would have not just involved Obama saying, hey, don't hire this guy, he's bad news. it would have been much more not impossible. I mean, John Brennan got hired after being involved in torture, so
Right.
you can do a lot and still get hired into the White House, as it turns out. But yeah, I think had Flynn been held accountable to his earlier problems with classified information, then I think you'd be in a different situation today. But nevertheless, yes. So he was already kind of arrogant, and people, let's be honest, that people like David Petraeus, did he go to prison for sharing code word documentation with his girlfriend and storing it in his desk drawer?
No, but he had
No.
done a lot for the country. I'm sorry.
Well, but that's sort of the thing.
Right,
I mean,
right.
That's sort of the thing.
Right, and I guess there becomes this sort of
excused.
this sense that we can get away. But I mean, it sounds like what Flynn has been up to on some level is a little bit more nefarious than what Petraeus was doing. I mean,
Petraeus was trying to get laid, right?
Right, exactly. And on a very basic level, he just comes off as a sad sack in some way. It's like maybe we should just give all of those guys like, a new red Corvette, and just that way they don't have to give highly sensitive documents to their would-be girlfriends. But all right, so if that's the case, so if Flynn was that confident, and maybe it was because he knew, like, if I go down, so doesn't Jared. What does that say about his? I mean, because when Flynn's lawyer had offered up this immunity thing, was that just a sort of this is what you do, you offer it as early as you can get because, you have the further down the process you go, the less leverage you have in terms of getting a good deal, because once they start to get convictions or mounting evidence, you have less leverage. Is that what was going on with that offer of immunity? Like, and prosecutors, we just don't need that right now?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the DOJ has evidence that Flynn did not register, that Flynn did not tell DOD that he was getting payments from Russia. They have evidence that he lied to the FBI. You and I agree, and a lot of other evidence suggests. And that's before we get to whatever Sally Yates was talking about, the underlying behavior, which was problematic. So there are at least three kind of borderline crimes. I mean, lying to the FBI is big, but Petraeus got away with that too. Those are three crimes that he can be charged with right away. And what they would do normally, and that's, again, ignoring the underlying behavior that Yates couldn't talk about. And so what normally happens in prosecutions is you charge him and you say, well, if you plead guilty, then, we'll take that into consideration on sentencing, but you got to narc out Jared Kushner.
Right.
And so that is probably what the prosecutors and EDVA are thinking of right now. And there are those reports that there are a bunch of subpoenas going out to Flynn associates. What we've talked about, you would need to go tell a grand jury about all of the funding that he had gotten. You would have to bring in the DOD people who didn't get informed about him taking money from Russia. You would need to prove his intent that he was lying to Russia, lying to the FBI about his conversations with Russia intentionally. And that's what you would need to pretty much put Mike Flynn in a vice such that he would have it in his best interest to cooperate, to talk about the other Trump associates who might be compromised by Russia.
And presumably that's what's going on it's a Virginia grand jury, right? I mean, we saw that they're sending out subpoenas for Mike Flynn associates to try and figure out, some of his financial questions. So what you started by saying that the timing of the Comey firing had to do with what that stuff that Sally Yates may have revealed. So what draw that line a little bit clearer for us. So why was it what Sally Yates said there? Did that create pressure? And whose pressure? Who did that create pressure on? I mean, the story that we're getting now is that Donald Trump's been sitting around for like 2 weeks, fuming about Comey. And I recall, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, there was a day that Comey went to the White House. There was nothing reported really beyond the fact that he visited the White House. Nobody knew what they talked about. And I suspect it was one of those sessions where, Trump was anticipating him telling more or whatnot, or being more effusive, and it didn't come. And that's maybe where it started with Trump. I've seen reporting too that says Trump and Sessions and even this guy Rodstein were upset that Comey would not give them a preview of his Senate testimony. So what is it about what happened with Yates that may have impacted the timeline as to when Comey was going to go? Or who do you think was the impetus behind getting Comey out?
Well, I mean, Trump has also repeatedly hoped that Comey would exonerate Trump. Right? In his bizarre letter, he was like, yeah, thank you for telling me 3 times that I'm not under investigation. But of course, if he said, am I under investigation? Trump, in his little lizard brain, would think, am I the collective me, including my son-in-law, Jared Kushner, am I under investigation? Is any Trump property under investigation? And Jim Comey would use the legalistic definition of, are you the subject of the investigation? No, you aren't. But, oh, by the way, your greasy son-in-law has done some dodgy things, and he may be next. That may be the subtext. And I just think, Trump believes that anyone in government, that their role is to protect the president. And that gets really dodgy we can't operate like that, to have the Department of Justice operating such that people are asked to protect the president first and foremost.
How much do you think? What's Jeff Sessions' involvement in all this? I mean, you mentioned that you had a piece. I guess it was yesterday that James Clapper may have been referencing Jeff Sessions in terms of unmasking. Tell us about that, and where do you think Jeff Sessions is in all this? The guy who is so recused from this investigation that he only has the ability to fire the lead
right.
investigator.
Right. So James Clapper and Sally Yates were both asked if they had unmasked the names of either members of Congress or Trump associates. And the short version is, if you do the math, then James Clapper's answer may have been C, both of the above, but I've only unmasked one person's name. So it's one of those kind of logic problems, like if so-and-so's father is so-and-so's son. If it's true that he has unmasked the name of a member of Congress and the name of a Trump associate, but only unmasked one name, then there are very few candidates. Richard Burr is one, the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who was on an advisory committee. Devin Nunes, who acted so stupidly, who was a transition official and is now recused on the House Intelligence Committee from this investigation, but still chair of it. But the big one is Jeff Sessions. And it is highly likely that that is the person in question, because we know that Jeff Sessions had conversations with Kislyak. And what that means, if it is in fact, that's just a guess, but if, this is sort of reading the tea leaves, if it is in fact the case that Clapper had to unmask Sessions' name, it would mean that the conversation, Kislyak's side of the conversation, his intent, his apparent goals in speaking to Sessions were such that Clapper had a concern about Kislyak's activities, not Sessions. And he was very clear about that in the hearing. But that would say, that would explain why the leaks about Sessions' conversations with Kislyak came out. It would raise more questions about why he didn't disclose those conversations. It would raise more questions about whether he was honest about what he said to Kislyak. So that's what's interesting about that disclosure. Again, it's all tea leaves. There's no confirmation that's what happened, but yeah. So and again, if going back to Al Franken's comment, Al Franken, who knew enough to ask Jeff Sessions if he had had any conversations with the Russians, And his take was, look, maybe Trump didn't fire anybody because he realized if he set the precedent of firing people who are lying about the conversations with Sergei Kislyak, he's going to have to fire a bunch of other people. The first on that list, at least from Franken's perspective, would be the guy who lied to him in his confirmation hearing about the conversation he had with Kislyak, and that would be Jeff Sessions. So then we could get rid of Sessions, who's a horrible attorney general, and that would be a great start to things.
Is it strange that the two members of Congress, or I should, aside from Jeff Sessions, the two members of Congress who are also Trump associates, and let me just clarify something. Is associates a specific term? I mean, is it?
I'm sure there are some other members of Congress that I'm forgetting.
Okay.
The reason they have come up is because, they both were in charge of the investigation into Trump. And Trump made them associates at interesting times. I was asking in August, I was asking about Burr in particular because he had a closer election than we expected last year. I was asking why Burr wasn't looking at the hack, at the DNC hack, but also at the shadow brokers hack, which is definitely related. And there was this guy releasing massive amounts of NSA documents, NSA hacking tools online, and sort of thought that was something that the Senate Intelligence Committee ought to have a review of, and never has happened as far as no public one. And that was the moment when Burr was put on Trump's advisory committee. So, those kinds of those are convenient things. I mean, it's obviously
it's just weird to me that both the Senate and the House Intelligence Committee chairman happen to be part of Trump's campaign fairly early on, relatively speaking.
Yep.
All right. Well, and when Clapper says that thing in that session, because I noticed there were some questions he'd answered that Sally Yates wouldn't, even though are those like is there any signaling going on there? Is there any sort of like vague threats, or just sort of like is Clapper just testifying, or is he testifying in such a way, even though he's sort of, I guess, ex officio? Saying things as a way of trying to sort of corral certain people, or to get certain people to do certain things, or fear certain things?
I think Clapper, this is going to sound nuts because people like me are supposed to hate Clapper kind of categorically because of his not wittingly lie. And he made those jokes. Like, he used the not wittingly line 2 times in the hearing, which is his famous lie to Ron Wyden about whether millions of Americans were being collected on.
Right.
So he was, and I also think, having watched him for years, I think he was just more relaxed than he's been for a very long time. I mean, he was so ready for retirement, and then he had this Russian thing explode at the end of his tenure, and so I do think that he was pretty excited to be done. So good for him. But I think he was also being careful. I mean, I think he was trying to be as forthcoming as he could be, and he, by definition, can be more forthcoming than Yates because of the propriety around ongoing investigations. I mean, Yates is trying really hard not to make the Jim Comey mistake, right?
Right.
And she should. Like, no matter what you think about the Trump, I mean, this is something I think Democrats need to remember. No matter what you think about the Trump people, it is still possible, although diminishing possibility, that these Trump people are just incompetent and naive. Like,
right.
It's possible. It's possible that Trump has been doing mobbed up business with Russians forever and doesn't see the difference between that and being president, and that he needs a good kick in the pants and everything. It's, as I said, a diminishing possibility that is the case, but it is still possible. Whereas, like, and therefore, we should let the investigation proceed. We should be careful before we assume,
and it's also important just to maintain these policies for just for other people. I mean,
yeah, when you and I get busted, right?
Exactly. I mean, honestly,
we should adhere to the same standards we want to adhere to other people. And
absolutely.
So, I think it is fine to say, I think it is suspicious that Jared Kushner did not reveal any of his dubious conversations with Russians, and meeting with any sanctioned bankster is, I think, really dubious. But maybe he's just an idiot.
Right, and
we should never rule out that these people are just idiots.
In my experience, there's a lot of things that look like sort of intricate webs of conspiracy from the outside, where from the inside it's just really just bumbling people who are just sort of trying to save their skin or do the right, not the right thing, but to enrich themselves at any given turn. Well, all right. So let me ask you this: are we going to see now? I mean, prior to the recusal of Sessions, the supposed recusal, we saw, it seemed to me, like a cascade of leaks over the course of like a week and a half, where every night at 10:30 or 10 o'clock, the Post would have a story, and then 15 minutes later, the Times would have a story, and then the Wall Street Journal would have a story that would all just sort of bring it along in terms of, I think at that time it was, Jeff Sessions' meetings with Visliak. Are we going to see the same thing now until we see a special prosecutor?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, and that's another area where I'm actually somewhat sympathetic with the Trump people. It is. I can think of one other case where the contents of a FISA order are leaked publicly, like they were with Flynn, and that is. Either we need to be a lot more public about who's getting FISA orders against them if they're Americans, or that needs to be somewhat sacrosanct, that you don't go leaking that somebody is the target of a FISA warrant, because a lot of innocent people do end up getting collected on under these national security things, and either we have them and we find potential Russian spies, which would be a good thing, or we don't have, but if we have them and we are looking for Russian spies and we may investigate somebody and discover they're not a Russian spy, then making that public, I think, is a really terrible precedent. So Carter Page as well, like the fact that we know that we've been told Carter Page has a FISA order against him, that is bad. I'm actually really sympathetic with the Trump people that should not have been leaked. And the extent, I keep thinking back to Comey's inability to stop the leaks against Clinton.
Right.
And so Trump, one of the things he legitimately is trying to do is stop the leaks. He didn't care. He benefited from it. He wouldn't be president today if it weren't for, the New York office of the FBI leaking like a sieve about Hillary Clinton and Anthony Weiner. But it is the case that we need to, there are reasons to have some publicity, some visibility into what's going on with FBI investigations, especially into like people who might be president. But it is also the case that the leaking out of FBI has gotten just crazy, and sometimes that works against people who aren't rich and famous. Sometimes that happens all the time in terrorism cases against these,
right.
18-year-olds who are charged with terrorism crimes, and they are tried in the public sphere well before they get a lawyer, and that doesn't lead to justice either. So,
let me ask you this: can we make that determination now? In other words, is it if 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, we realize that there was a concerted effort to suppress the investigation, that there was a concerted effort to cover up, doesn't that leaking become whistleblowing at that in that context? And is that something that we need some measure of hindsight to make an assessment of?
Well, I also think that I might better describe it as creating the. Remember that Jim Comey did not brief even Congress on the fact that there was a counterintelligence investigation into Trump's people until March.
Until Sessions was recused.
Well, until Sessions was recused and until Flynn was gone, because both would have had to be briefed along the process.
And
they
Comey clearly didn't trust Devin Nunes for not going and telling Sessions, right? I mean, it seemed to me that the timing of that was specifically because they whoever leaked this information to make sure that Sessions had to recuse himself, and then Comey felt comfortable revealing to congressional leaders, like 3 months after he had been first asked, 4 months, it seems to me, right? I mean, they were meeting with him in December. And he only did that because he knew that, or he thought he was untouchable because now Sessions was recused. And so, I mean, to me, that sounds like a form of whistleblowing, right? Where it's like, we need to leak this to maintain the integrity of a process, and there's no other mechanism for which we can allow this investigation to proceed.
Yeah, but by the same token, I mean, a lot of the leaking about the investigation into Trump's people reportedly alerted Russian targets that they were being surveilled and led them to change their communication methods. So it is, I mean, the one other case I know of where a standing FISA order was leaked to the press was in 2009 when Pete Hoekstra did it with regards to Anwar al-Awlaki. And al-Awlaki then adjusted his methods. He started talking to, including Americans, but Westerners, about maybe attacks. And he learned to subvert the efforts to collect on him. So, I'm sympathetic both ways.
Right.
I sound like a kind of hawk, don't I?
Yeah, total apologist.
Something in my coffee this morning. No, but look, on this Russian investigation, I think Democrats underestimate. I mean, they're happy to say 20 dead bodies, right? There are maybe 2 or 3 that might definitely be tied to this investigation. They always seem to forget that there are several people who've been charged in Russia with treason. That if that's the case, we basically lost 2 or 3 good spies in Russia because of the publicity surrounding the case. And so I get the need to push for some kind of resolution on this case. I really do. But I also think that Democrats need to remember that people can die if there's too much the kind of investigation that the FBI investigators in D.C. are doing is a dramatically different kind of investigation into what happened with Hillary Clinton's email server.
Right.
A, because it's a lot more serious, but B, because contrary to what you might believe from the right-wing press, Hillary really wasn't going to kill anybody because of her email server. And that's not the case here. It's just not.
Well, you said that, not me. But so do you think? Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying Trump's going to kill anybody,
no.
But right?
I mean, I think it depends on. I mean, as president, there's a certain inevitability. He's already probably, but not as it pertains to these particular issues that we're talking about. But two more things. One, do you think the investigation is going to continue unfettered regardless of who gets appointed FBI director? And two, just to roll this in, there was a report by ProPublica that Comey misstated the amount of emails on Weiner's laptop. Was that relevant at all? Was there any relevance to that, or was it just, because
it was relevant, but I thought that there had already been a move to correct that.
The FBI was looking to correct it. The FBI was looking to figure out how to correct it, but the question is who gave Comey that information in the first place?
Yeah, and I think that is relevant. I think Comey may have been lied to when he reopened the investigation into Hillary, and I think that that's worth. But the other thing is, Comey also suggested that there's something else, some other conflict within DOJ on the Hillary investigation that will come out with the IG report. So, I think there are a couple of questions with regards to his handling of the Hillary case, which is indefensible in any case, right? Like Comey's treatment of the Hillary case is indefensible. But we should remember that we should apply the same standards we want Hillary to have been treated with to people in the Trump administration who may be sleazy, but whatever, take the high ground. But I think that was relevant. Having reread the transcript later in the day, he did partly correct what he said wrong during the course of the hearing. he said, "Oh, I didn't mean there were thousands of classified emails. I meant there were thousands of emails."
Well, okay.
Yeah,
and
but
do you think
I agree but I want to know who briefed him, because I think that the metadata should have already told the investigators there wasn't going to be anything new, and I think the investigators wanted to reopen that data to have access to the data in a way that was clean from the assurances that had been made to Hillary's people as part of the email investigation, right? So in other words, it gave a virgin birth of the same emails associated, but because it came in through the Weiner campaign, because they wanted to go after the foundation.
Right. I mean, it
so
seems to me it was just like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Anthony Weiner looking at his wife's email account, right? She signs in one time, he goes back in, signs in, gets all the emails, because he's out of he's out of show business, and he wants to know what's going on, essentially, based upon, nothing other than just sort of like the perspective we have on Anthony Weiner. He strikes me as that type of guy, frankly, but who knows?
Yeah, right.
All right, so lastly, what happens with the investigation going forward with the FBI, the work they're doing?
Who knows? I think, that there is some lack of clarity about whether Comey had asked for more money or more prosecutors to be dedicated to the case. I also think there's some interesting, I mean, we know that there's a bunch of stuff going on in Maine Justice and EDVA. I actually have some concerns about the way that Dana Bente, who is the single U.S. attorney in the country right now, who is the U.S. attorney for EDVA and therefore in charge of both parts of the Russian investigation, but also the investigation into WikiLeaks. And he is now or about to become the acting Assistant Attorney General for National Security Division, which means he approves things like FISA warrants. And
so just to catch people up, EDVA is the Eastern District of Virginia, and that's the only U.S. attorney, as opposed to acting U.S. attorneys around the country, because they have not been replaced.
Right, they've all been fired. So he didn't get fired because he was acting Deputy Attorney General.
Right.
Once Rosenstein got approved, then he's all set to become the acting NSD. And just as an example, I mean, I know that a lot of your listeners want WikiLeaks to be fried, and I'm sympathetic with that view to a point. But the precedent to be set by prosecuting, I mean, if there's not more evidence than what we know exists, or if they are not taking an approach, if they are not using WikiLeaks' involvement in Snowden's flight, if they are not basing a prosecution of WikiLeaks on either evidence we haven't seen yet or on helping Snowden, helping a fugitive escape, then I think the precedent in prosecuting WikiLeaks is really terrible.
Right.
And to have that decision be made by Dana Bente, who's been going after WikiLeaks for at least 4 years, with him being the superior who would approve his decision to go after them. See what I mean?
Yes, he's both.
So he gets to approve.
He signs. He puts in a request to charge WikiLeaks on A or B, and then he walks across the desk and signs it. Takes a look and this looks good in order to me. Here you go. You got the approval.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And I think that given the precedents involved, particularly there, I mean, I've covered some of the cases Bente has pursued. He is a very, very aggressive prosecutor. As somebody who thinks our prosecutions go a little too far sometimes, I'm not crazy about that. He's the EDVA, for those who don't know, obviously it's where CIA is, it's where the Pentagon is, it's where a bunch of other, where the Director of National Intelligence, it's where most of our spooks are. And so that division has a bunch of precedents, and also the jury pool. I mean, it's like you can assume anybody in a jury pool in that district is going to be at least sympathetic with keeping classified information. And so that's what Mike Flynn is up against.
Interesting.
Those are the people who, if he gets charged, will be the jury of his peers. They actually will be his peers, right? Because those are the kind of people he worked his entire career with, and they'll be like, dude, what the heck were you doing having these conversations with Sergei Kislyak? That's
Right.
crazy. But understand that that's the environment we're talking about in EDBA. And Dana Bente is a very aggressive prosecutor. If that may serve us really well in the Russian case. And that's not where the only parts of the Russian investigation are. There are parts in San Francisco and in Pittsburgh, actually. And so there are some interesting questions about how those will get spun out. But the EDBA one, which is what we're all focused on, which is the Trump officials one and also the WikiLeaks one, people should expect, unless something happens to Dana Bente, people should expect, if anything, a prosecution that is too aggressive, if that's possible, But that's not, Bente could be fired tomorrow.
Yeah, that seems I would imagine if we see anybody else in the investigative sort of apparatus get fired anytime soon, we're in special prosecutor world. It seems to me, if not independent counsel, but that would be legislative. And I don't know. I think there's one as a Comstock, and maybe and she came from the DOJ, but she is now calling for a special prosecutor, first Republican to do so, in my estimation, as far as I can tell. So. Is she
calling for a special prosecutor or a independent commission?
I got to double check on that, but I thought it was a special prosecutor.
Okay.
But I will double check on that
yeah.
by the time this airs. Oh wait, here it is. There must be an independent investigation that people can trust. So it's not. I guess from that statement, it could be sort of vague.
Right.
But. Nevertheless, there's a slight movement in that direction. She is in trouble. She is facing a tough reelection, so this is where it's going to come from. But
one of the reasons I asked is because my congressman, who people hate when it comes to healthcare or budgets, Justin Amash, is one of the Republicans who's always been opposed to Trump, and he's also said he's putting together legislative language on an independent commission, which is not necessarily the best approach forward. But there are other I think Jeff Flake is getting closer. To
what do you think the
best
approach forward would be?
I'm still not convinced. Look, there are no U.S. attorneys except for Dana Bente. So by definition, any special counsel, anything akin to what we've had since the special prosecutor law was eliminated.
That was the Ken Starr law, essentially.
Basically. So that person would have to be an assistant U.S. attorney. The last one, so Pat Fitzgerald is not an option anymore. He's in the private sector. And so to bring him in, you'd have to pass legislation to make it cool for him as a private sector employee or rehire him. And I don't think Trump's going to do that. So then you're looking at, what assistant U.S. attorney would you trust with this investigation? And would they be an improvement on Dana Bente, who is the only U.S. attorney in the country? And I don't know that the answer is yes. I don't know that there's an assistant U.S. attorney out there that is going to be better at holding up to the pressure of Trump than Dana Bente.
Fair enough. Marcy Wheeler, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I hope you're not late for lunch.
I'm okay. Thanks. Good to talk to you, Sam.
Thank you, Marcy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks. That was a long one, but she's... I don't know if there's anybody who is more well-versed and thoughtful about this stuff that, well, certainly not that I'm aware of.
Deliberative
and just incredibly well-versed and level head about it. So if I have the opportunity to talk to her for 40 minutes, I will do it.
Even 51 minutes.
or in certain instances, 51 minutes. Generally 40, but 51. Look, I was just priming the pump. One of the things I came up with. And she told me I was not under investigation 3 times. We do now have a revision to the revision of the revision of why James Comey was fired by Donald Trump. We will play that clip in the fun half of the program. We're also going to play that clip of, and it's a good thing we didn't get Hillary Clinton in there, because otherwise you'd probably end up seeing like Henry Kissinger at the White House. We will also play a clip of Henry Kissinger at the White House. Not from
whoever is there.
Betsy DeVos was greeted, I think, in the way that she should be greeted, not just at commencement hearings, but anywhere she goes.
At the grocery store. If she even goes to grocery stores.
And, yeah, exactly. We got all that and more.
Multi-level marketing conferences with her husband.
Got some great clips of what it's like to go on vacation at South Padre Island if you're not a white person. And also, speaking of white people, in Nolens, they tore down the statue of Jefferson Davis, the well-known, really, hey, it's treason when you try and secede. But
well, I don't know if Jeff sees it that way.
It's a rebellion. That's what I was saying.
but I think we can all agree, not very competent guy. Not good. Chaos. And so they tore that statue down in New Orleans. We'll get to all that. But, folks, let me just remind you, it is your memberships that make this show possible. You and only you. Specifically you. I'm talking to you. Your memberships make this show possible. To become a member, go to jointhemajorityreport.com. And as a way of saying thank you, we give you bonus material every single goddamn day.
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
You're all ungrateful. Hello? This is Sam Seder. I hate my audience so much, but give me money. Thank you. If I could rub some shekels together to talk about the news, I won't be mad. But I am, because I work so hard. But at the same time, all I want to do is do this. Just yak and yak and yak.
It's true. It's
Hello?
true. It's very complicated, folks. If you are one of those people, however, who cannot afford it and wants the bonus content, by all means, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Bear with us, as sometimes it takes us a while to get to emails. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. Get the 10% off of your coffee, and you can get the Majority Report blend, which is delicious. And if you own a coffee shop, look into it as getting it as your house coffee. They did that up at a place up in Hudson. Janine Garofalo was up there getting a movie. She walked in, saw the coffee. Getting a movie. She was renting a movie. She went up to Hudson.
Oh, they rent movies up in Hudson? Okay.
She was shooting a movie up there. She was shooting a movie.
Hello, can I get a movie? Sorry.
Get all your movies from Just Coffee. I'm tired, folks. And
really?
MajorityReportKickback.com. Well, last night, first of all, Saul's not going to bed.
Rachel.
Right? Everybody's heard that.
Yes,
story.
Saul doesn't let you sleep.
He doesn't go to bed, and then I can
everything.
end up watching Brian Williams, for God's sake.
Brian
and it's
Williams,
just,
MSNBC, you're on with Hayes, you're tired, Nikki, you're done.
I
We
think
get it. Go to the front half.
MajorityReportKickback.com. If you buy stuff from Amazon, if you buy stuff from Jet.com, buy it through our affiliate link available there. Figure out some special way in which you can always go there easily, but I'm not allowed to say the word. Have you read any good books lately, Mark? Oh, your name's Michael. I'm sorry. All right. That's so dumb. See you in the fun half. I got caught up in the song. I got caught up in the song, and I did not even call into the call-in system. I am sorry for that, folks.
Save the tweets.
I was
got it.
I was really grooving on that song today. Somebody sent me on Twitter another version of a punk band 222. I feel like we may have sort of had run across that in the past, but we will put that into circulation, as it were. Circulation, is that the right word I'm looking for?
Yeah, man.
Uchiwali, Chris Christie or Rudy Giuliani for the head of the FBI? We'll get to this later, but the Democrats seem to be very clear that they're going to obstruct in every way they can. We already have, like, Wyden putting on hold on sort of a Justice Department official. They're going to gum up the works. It's going to slow things down. They're going to be a big pain in the butt for the Republicans. I don't know why they haven't been doing this already, to be honest with you.
That's really frustrating. They should have been doing this out of the gate. I guess it takes, like,
it's not so easy. And the thing is, too, is you don't want to try to do stuff like this and fail. Because
you go for the king, you better not miss.
Thank you.
Wow. Making up for Praetorian Guard over there, buddy.
Exactly. And there is also, we're going to talk about in the House, there may be a discharge petition, too. It is really just a question of whether or not there's some Republicans who are breaking up. I mentioned in the interview that Comstock seems to be the first member of the House that I'm aware of. In the Senate, apparently McCain's been calling for an independent, some type of independent investigation, and you have one or two others who have been leaning that way. So it's conceivable we're going to see this independent counsel. I have a feeling what we're going to see more leaks until that comes. But first, let us dispel with the notion. Is that how little Marco said it back in the thing? No, not Padre Island. Let's do the president's interview.
That he didn't know. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, let us dispel with the notion that this wasn't Donald Trump's vague idea. Now, apparently what has happened, and this is what I would guess from this, is that Rod Rosenstein was, in some respects, duped into becoming the fulcrum for the firing. He did provide to Trump basically what reads as an op-ed. I agree with its sentiments, but there are those out there who say, hey, there's also procedures within the FBI on how you fire somebody and under what circumstances. And that letter reflects none of those policies and procedures. So in some ways, Rosenstein is guilty of the exact same thing that he's accusing Comey of, which is not following FBI procedures and protocols. But we don't know what Rosenstein was tasked with doing. It could have been like, hey, if you were to write an op-ed, what would it look like? And he goes, oh.
James Comey's kind of, he's tall, but he's kind of gay looking, right? What do you say? What say you, Rod?
So
look at my daughter.
I think what happened is Rosenstein went and threatened to quit, which has been reported over this. And Trump basically said, I'll make it right. And here he is doing this. There's a couple of things to note here over the course of this. One, just again, Trump is, if you listen to this with that in mind, because you should be nervous about Rosenstein quitting, because then it starts to look even worse, right? You don't want this to be cascading. It's being reported that Bannon even said, hold off on firing Comey, as much as I hate him, because I have some sense of strategy.
Hey, I'm in a drunken stupor.
The master strategist.
There might actually find a body.
But
at one
oddly
of my...
enough, Pence, Sessions, Kushner, all signed off on
He
it.
should be fired. He would
Dad.
Dad. Hello.
Okay. But here is Donald Trump sitting down with Lester Holt, and note note it from that perspective. Also, note how tight his suit coat has become, because he famously wore like 4 sizes too big, and I think he may have to bump that up to
He's
6.
overcorrecting.
Yeah, here we go.
He's a grandstander. The FBI has been in turmoil. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. You
What?
take a look at the FBI a year ago. It was in virtual turmoil less than a year ago. It hasn't recovered from that.
Monday, you met with the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein.
Right.
Did you ask for a recommendation?
What I did is I was going to fire Comey. My decision. It was not.
You had made the decision before they came in the room.
I was going to fire Comey. There's no good time to do it, by the way.
Because in your letter you said I accepted their recommendation. So you would-
You know, there are good times to do it. I mean, let's say there was an inspector general of the FBI report that comes out and shows that through very careful, deliberate process, has determined that he violated FBI policy. I have a feeling that inspector general report would actually show that. Maybe it wouldn't, but that would be a pretty good time. But I'm not the president.
Already made the decision.
Oh, I was going to fire regardless of recommendation.
So there was really
He made a recommendation. He's highly respected, very good guy, very smart guy. The Democrats like him, the Republicans like him. He made a recommendation, but regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey.
Let me ask you about your termination letter to Mr. Comey. You write, I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation.
1, 2, 3.
Why did you put that in there?
Because he told me that. I mean, he told me that.
He told you weren't under investigation with regard
I've
to the
heard
Russia
that.
investigation?
I've heard that from others. I think.
Was it in a phone call? Did you meet face to face?
I had a dinner with him. He wanted to have dinner because he wanted to stay on. We had a very nice dinner at the White House very early on. A dinner was arranged. I think he asked for the dinner. And he wanted to stay on as the FBI head. And I said, I'll consider. We'll see what happens. But we had a very nice dinner. And at that time, he told me, you are not under investigation, which I knew anyway.
That was one meeting. What was it?
First of all, when you're under investigation, you're giving all sorts of documents and everything. I knew I wasn't under. And I heard it was stated at the committee, at some committee level, that I wasn't. Number one.
So that didn't come directly
then
from
during
him.
a phone call, he said it, and then during another phone call, he said it. So he said it once at dinner, and then he said it twice during phone calls.
Did you call him?
In one case, I called him. In one case, he called me.
And did you ask, am I under investigation?
I actually asked him, yes. I said, if it's possible, would you let me know, am I under investigation? He said, you are not under investigation.
But he's given sworn testimony that there is an ongoing investigation into the Trump campaign and possible collusion with the Russian government. You were the centerpiece of the Trump campaign.
All
so
I
was
can
he
tell
being
you
truthful
is,
when he says you were under investigation?
I know that I'm not under investigation. Me, personally. I'm not talking about campaigns. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm not under investigation.
I would have liked Lester Holt to have asked, like, okay, he told you that, but surely he must have told you other things that you didn't include in that letter, right? Like, why that? If it's so obvious that you're not under investigation, why that? I don't know that Trump is under investigation. I just think that watching him answer that question would be fun.
If it's possible, could you tell me?
Yeah. Listen, do you have a crush on me? Do you have a crush on me? Can I ask you if you have a crush on me?
Blink twice if I'm not under investigation. Hey, James, could you take a sip of water if you think that if Ivanka was your daughter, you might want to feel it up yourself?
Oh, come on.
I like the idea, though, that Bannon is, like, emerging from a drunken stupor, realizing that, like, a new...
did what?
Wait a second. Wait. There's a new fucking Washington Post report about, like, another hooker in a bathtub, and I'm trying to catch up on a Stormfront forum, and you people don't even have the fucking bearing of mind to not follow fire.
Wait. Is today Tuesday? Holy shit. I thought today was Sunday.
Oh, shit, man. All right, I gotta get on some fucking Bermuda shit. If that little globalist cuck wants to fire him because he's fucking investigating him because the little prick didn't even know to not meet with the Russians without documenting it. This is the difference between getting into Harvard on the merits and not. Whatever else you say about me, I got it on the merits.
There is a saying the last refuge of scoundrels, right? Isn't that a saying, Matt?
Yeah.
Now look,
You've really lost your confidence since Praetorian Guard. Yes, it is.
If you find yourself firing the head of the FBI and feeling so defensive about it that you have to make the statement in the firing letter that you told me I am not being investigated. I mean, remember now, this is a guy who's firing because the FBI is in total disarray. It's totally in disarray. But I'm also going to reiterate that on 3 times you told me I'm not being investigated, so it's impossible I'm being investigated. Well, look, you get a lot of pressure from that. What do you do? What could possibly in any way distract people? Oh, I know. Let's bring a guy to the White House who was responsible for some of the greatest atrocities in modern American history. I give you Donald Trump and Henry Kissinger.
Everybody knows Dr. Kissinger, and we're right now talking about Russia and various other matters. We're talking about Syria, and I think that we're going to do very well with respect to Syria. I think things are happening that are really, really, really positive.
Really, really, really positive.
We're going to stop the killing and the death. We had a very, very good meeting with Mr. Lavrov, and it was, I thought it was very, very good. What we want to do is we want to see the killing, the horrible killing in Syria stop as soon as possible, and everybody's working toward that end. But it's an honor to have Henry Kissinger with us. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. And thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Why did you fire Director Comey? Why did you fire Director Comey?
Because he wasn't doing a good job, very simply. He was not doing a good job.
Did it affect your meeting with the Russians today?
Excuse me?
Did it affect your meeting with the Russians today?
Will the new FBI director be in charge of the Russia investigation?
Thank you.
Henry Kissinger had a lot to say.
Henry Kissinger is just like an evil old wizard now. Barely even. He's just sort of like,
what's this?
He's basically like, I would prefer to not go out, but I mean, if you need me by your side while you're generating a constitutional crisis, I will be there.
Oh, yeah.
Core brand proposition.
Exactly. Seems like old times.
I will tell you this. Now, everyone knows Donald Trump's bad. However, if my wife, who is probably the greatest criminal in the history of American politics, had been president, Henry Kissinger would be directing policy across the globe. Because, see, that was the plan. My wife wanted to drill natural gas in every pipeline on planet Earth. So, is Donald Trump bad? Yes. But what you are doing is continuing to ignore the corruption at the DNC, which disenfranchised Bernie. Watch H.A. Goodman. He's got the documents.
Please. Oh, God. The last thing I want to do is like get...
There was an email in 2014 where one of Hillary's deputy state chairs in Nevada said, hey, look at Bernie. His new shirt doesn't fit him well. That's the kind of corrupt cronyism that the Democratic Party establishment, along with my wife, engaged in throughout the entire campaign. And you haven't mentioned the DNC lawsuit not a single time.
I like Bill Clinton when he gets very indignant.
Where's the Jimmy Reefer Cake song? Why won't Michael debate him? I don't see any of this. I mean, it's just disgusting.
Let's. This is really heartening. I mean, to see young people today express themselves in this way to someone like Betsy DeVos, I find to be very heartening. It's not going to mean anything long term, although it's like, I think, speaking of term, the more uncomfortable this is for her, I think the better. And I think it's just important just for the sake of solidarity. Betsy DeVos gave the commencement address at Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach. It is a historically black university. You'll recall that she cited historically black universities as existing only because people wanted to create school choice. Now, that is basically, akin to, I don't know, calling, slaves like immigrants. They were involuntary,
Exactly.
but
they're immigrants.
Yeah.
Right.
The historically black universities exist because white colleges historically excluded black people. And so black people decided that, hey, we deserve an education too. So it wasn't so much about school choice or draining the public school system of money to pay for parochial schools. The context is a little different. And here is how Betsy DeVos was greeted as a commencement speaker. Good for these students.
Dr. Jackson, Board of Trustees, thank you so very, very much for this great honor and privilege.
And there go the students all standing up and showing her their back. That's a smart technique. Could all the moms in the audience please stand up and face the opposite direction? I want to note that you're here and honor you. I'll tell you why I think this is so much more effective than, and I just think it's a question of efficacy, than trying to prevent someone from speaking at a university or whatnot. Because this is humiliating to Betsy DeVos.
Oh yeah, and I don't think she can take much of it, frankly.
Oh, you know what? I think that she can.
You do?
I mean, I think my sense is for Betsy DeVos. I was saying to Matt, like, this seems to me is like would be the equivalent of me going to a like a carnival and going through the haunted house. It might be a little disturbing, the haunted house ride. Or like a roller coaster, like I might get a little sweaty.
She's like, you mean like haunted house, like going to a room full of black people and talking to them?
I think
I know what you're saying.
Honestly, I think for me, but after it was over, I'd get over it and I'd look back and I go, that was an interesting experience. I think, she's a billionaire. She doesn't care. I think for her, it's just like, I did it.
But maybe conversely, she's someone who clearly, I mean, it would, in her Senate confirmation hearings, like, she's totally incompetent and has only been in these incredibly insulated worlds. I wonder if for her specifically, and it's just a theory, who knows, obviously, if she is specifically shocked at the level of vitriol and contempt that she's greeted with. Because I think some of these other ones, like, Jeff Sessions, like, oh, really, all upset.
I think the level of vitriol and disgust for her is probably only dwarfed by the level of dismissiveness and vitriol she has for every, for the rest of us. I think we're all part of the profane world in her mind.
Yes.
And she's on a mission from God. And so you're going to run into these types.
Right. Yep.
That would be my guess. But, who knows? I could be wrong. Speaking of a guy who must have very little disdain for humanity, we have one more clip from this town hall in New Jersey where Representative MacArthur, Tom MacArthur, who fashioned the compromise between really it was just some type of fig leaf, I guess, for the so-called moderates in the Republican Party to vote for a worse bill than was rejected the first time around when it comes to the repeal and replace. We played earlier a clip from a man whose kids have pre-existing conditions, whose wife is a cancer survivor, who told MacArthur that he was the greatest threat to his family. Well, here is MacArthur hearing from a woman about pre-existing conditions and
this is about basically what's the difference whether it's a private or a public sector bureaucrat. She makes this case very
right.
well.
Okay, here we go. As to, how you get rationed, supposedly, of health insurance.
Care was they had to make so many concessions to the insurance companies in order with Obamacare was they had to make so many concessions to the insurance companies in order to get it passed in the first place. That's where the problems were, and that's the problems that needed to be fixed. And you said, would I like some bureaucrat in Washington to make decisions about my health care if we have a single payer? And I said, what makes that anything worse than some employee of an insurance company with minimal education making the same kind of decisions?
Now, I don't know if it's fair to say these people have minimal
great?
education, but they certainly have a different agenda, right? Which is, I've got to keep the profitability of this company at the forefront of my mind versus what's going to provide the best care for this individual. I mean, when you talk about private industry, profit is job number one. Profit is job number one. And particularly in the context of health insurance, where it's not like, oh, I got hit by a bus. I'm now in the hospital. I find out my health insurance stinks. The elasticity of that, of your market choice there, not terribly elastic. This is the insurance you have. And now under the Republican regime, then you have a pre-existing condition. You want to leave that insurance, forget it. So it's a very good point. And I hope, again, can't encourage people enough to go out to these town halls and ask a difficult question. Ask how state high-risk insurance pools can possibly serve the number of people with pre-existing conditions based upon how many they served in the past. $2.5 billion a year they were subsidized. 34 states had these high-risk pools. Only 200,000 people were served. So do the math, folks. $2.5 billion for 200,000, and that was at a very expensive cost to people. They had to, half of it was from premiums. The other half was subsidies, $2.5 billion. How are you going to serve 4 million people? With $10 billion annually, even $20 billion annually. All right. Lastly, we have one other. We'll do that guy in a second. But all right. Well, let's do this. Let's do the. So in New Orleans, they are basically involved in a project, I guess, because this is not the first statue that's going down, and apparently it's not going to be the last. In New Orleans, the mayor there, a guy named Landrieu, I don't know if he's...
Moon Landrieu, I think.
I don't know that he's related.
He's a brother.
Oh, really? To the senator? Is that right?
Mitch Landrieu, excuse me.
He is trying to basically show that the city is tolerant and diverse and welcoming of all the people there, and that it is time to stop revering the Confederacy, which was, I guess you could say, treasonous. At best, you could say rebellious, but also rebelling because they wanted to maintain a system of slavery of black people.
If you and keep insulting a heritage Jew, I will bring the force of the Attorney Generalship to you.
That is, I mean, that's the best thing I think you could say for it. And so they've begun this process of taking down some statues. And here is Jefferson Davis, who, of course, was the president, the first, the last, and the only president of the Confederate States of America. He wasn't even considered to be terribly competent. I mean, things didn't work out so much for them. But here comes down a statue, and I think we can hear on this people cheering President. I don't know if we'll hear it, but apparently protesters were yelling, "President Davis, President Davis."
Davis Monument. It is impacting traffic this morning. The Canal streetcar line is not running at Jeff Davis and Canal. It will be blocked for the next 6 hours. So shuttle buses will operate from Broad to Tulane to Carrollton, back to Canal. That's in both directions. Angie Burley is watching traffic for us this morning. She'll have more on the traffic impacts in just a few minutes.
And a civil court judge has cleared the way for the Ladue administration to remove another monument. And we're seeing right now the Jefferson Davis Monument being lifted off of its podium, off of its stand. They are removing this and they are going to take it into storage. We do not know where it's going to ultimately end up, but they say that the 4 monuments that are being removed in the city will be taken to storage and will be placed at a site that is suitable sometime in the future.
That's right, and they've been doing prep work on this.
Yeah, and I think my recommendation would be to put the statue in shackles and maybe find a town square.
I buy it. I would support that.
All right, lastly, let's do this. This one's nice. It's the Trump era, folks. And I don't know why it is. Like, we can't go a week without seeing at least like one of these types of videos where someone is openly, like disgustingly hostile to someone with brown skin and basically citing Donald Trump as some type of license. This is on South Padre Island, which I guess is a big sort of spring break place. I don't know. And in Texas. And here's a dude who decides that he really is upset that this family is on the beach next to him.
This guy is harassing. Big time. Come on, guys.
All right, this is a bad video of this.
The silences are edited in the swear words.
This one you can't see. We should maybe find a different one. But here he is. He's talking about his Christianity. It's so broken up that you can't really make it out. But he's cussing at him. And then at one point he starts to bang his chest like he's some type of huge monkey. But he was very, very angry and yelling at them, "My Christianity," and going on. And apparently the cops did not do much to step in here. I mean,
Donald Trump got you. What? My country is the greatest country in the world. My country is the greatest country in the world. Go ahead. Don't give him this man's face.
Yeah. Donald Trump, my country's the greatest world. You terrorists will...
Oh, so the snowflakes can't have a free exchange of ideas on the beach. I get it. Quick, get this guy on Dave Rubin. He has some fucking ideas. But the liberal media always is trying to suppress thinking.
Let's go to the phones. You calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, it's John from San Antonio. Good afternoon, Sam.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm good. Yesterday, Dan Frumkin said that there was not a constitutional crisis because of the problem was with Congress. there's a level of corruption within the Republican elected officials and Republican voters, which put loyalty to party over the rule of law and democratic values. We talked in November about how I thought there would be a good chance that Trump was going to be impeached because of the crazy, stupid shit that he was going to do. You said you don't see Republicans turning on him, and I said it would get so bad that they would turn on him to save their own skin. You were skeptical. Your take has held up so far. Cenk Uygur said on Tuesday, while the news was breaking, that he thinks Trump is done. What is your opinion on this?
I think the compulsion by people like specifically Paul Ryan to get tax cuts, to finally achieve his dream of permanent tax reform. Remember now, too, they need to do this repeal and replace because that's the way they will get the numbers down and they will be able to make it revenue neutral and pass the Byrd test for reconciliation in the Senate. I think they are going to ride this out until they get that. I mean, it's conceivable the Republicans will, feel the pressure, but I would bet that if we do see impeachment of Donald Trump, it is going to be a function of the Democrats taking over the House in 2018 and pushing impeachment in the House, and perhaps vulnerable Republican senators, assuming the Republicans retain the Senate, vulnerable Republican senators agreeing to vote at that point. But I just don't see it. I mean, I think what's even more likely is an Article 5 situation. A 25th Amendment situation where they basically say he's crazy. We got to get rid of him. I think that's more likely than an impeachment at this point.
Good luck trying to prove that.
I mean, I just look, the Republicans, there was somebody tweeted out like I retweeted Jameson Fozer, I think, who had tweeted something to the effect of like, if you're a reporter and you're surprised at the Republican reaction to this, you have not been doing your job properly. Or at the very least, maybe you should recalibrate what you think of the Republican Party. No, none of this is surprising to me. None of it. I mean, John McCain is going to dance around. We all know what John McCain's going to do here, right? He's going to make a couple of squawks about it. He's going to make sure that he becomes the fulcrum and the sort of the moral center of the Republican Party. And when it comes time to actually doing anything, he's going to do nothing. I mean, maybe he'll sink this one repeal of methane leaks on federal lands, and good, that's better than not. But he's going to get on Sunday shows, and he will at one point walk into the White House and trade his moral indignation for a ground war somewhere, would be my guess. But I just don't, I don't think it's going to, the Republican Party, they will go down with the ship if they think they can pass tax cuts and whatnot. It's not, the equation, and this is the thing, for many years, people have been operating under this equation of like, why, just as an example, why would you run for president? It is such a thankless job. It is so, not to become president, to run. Why would you run? Why would you risk it? It is because it is very lucrative for every single person who ran are in a better shape financially than they were before it. Every single one of those Republicans. And it's not the same necessarily on the Democratic side, but on the Republican side it is. These Republicans, when they leave office, they're going to land in an extremely cushy job. So, they'll get over it. They'll lick their wounds. They'll lose because it's a wave. But to pass permanent tax cut reform is like the functional equivalent of, I don't know, me going into office and saying, like, I'll lose my job if I get single-payer health care. I think for them, that's what it is.
Okay. Also, the 25th Amendment does require 2/3 of the votes of the Senate, so it's actually very similar to impeachment.
But it's a different grounds.
Devin
It's different grounds, right? It would require the essentially the people close to Trump, Mike Pence, attesting to the fact that he's gone crazy. Because if he's impeached for corruption, that corruption then, bleeds on to folks like Mike Pence. There's only so long he's going to be able to play like I had no idea what was going around, right? I mean, how long can he play that game? But if it's Donald Trump's insane, that's not as contagious.
Perhaps. In February, Devin Nunes, Richard Burr, Mike Pompeo were all recruited by the White House to talk to reporters to knock down the New York Times story published in February 14th called Trump Campaign Aides had repeated contact with Russian intelligence, which is incredibly corrupt, and did not receive the proper press coverage. The conversation between McCabe and Reince Priebus about the Russian investigation is extremely problematic. McCabe has not publicly denied that conversation took place. How do you feel about Ron Rosenstein and Andrew McCabe? Are they going to be loyal to Trump, or are they going to be loyal to the Constitution?
Well, I mean, I think the Trump people don't let anybody in their orbit unless there's some sense that they're going to be loyal to them. So if these guys stick around for very long, my guess would be that they are going to toe the party line. I mean, look, this is why I keep saying, Paul Ryan is the biggest enabler in the country of Donald Trump, because if Paul Ryan is saying, I got no problem with this, these other people, for the most part, I think are going to fall in line. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the McCabe thing sounds really fishy to me. He should have never gone to the White House to be talking about that stuff in the first place. Ron Rosenstein, Rod Rosenstein, I don't know. I don't really still have a sense of that guy. I think he should resign. If I was him, I'd resign. But I don't know how anybody with any personal integrity, frankly, can associate themselves with this administration. So it's a hard question to answer. You know what I mean?
There's no like, I don't know how to put this, but there's no position to say to yourself with any kind of credibility that like I'm going to be a restraining influence here. I mean, I think the only way to be inside it is if you're really doing some type of like I'm here to essentially sabotage it or collect something on the inside of it. But I don't even think
it's possible that some people may do that. I don't
possible,
know.
But I was just thinking like even with Russia, I mean, it's a very different example. But like a guy like Sergei Lavrov, who's terrible, but he's good at what he does, and like there is even a part of that government that does function in a certain way. And there's almost nobody around Trump that you can say like, here are the people that just like represent some sense of like institutional
civil
respect
servants,
or
right.
civil servants. It just doesn't exist.
All right, John, appreciate the call.
All right, thank you.
Right.
It's like
I think Lavrov should just resign just out of having just met with Trump.
Yeah.
Calling from a
I tender resignation.
Calling from a 515 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Sanjeeva from Ames, Iowa.
Hello, Sanjeeva. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, we should probably thank the Our Revolution South Jersey chapter for making Tom MacArthur's life hell. I mean, they were the single-payer activists at that event, but I don't know about everyone else, though.
Well, good. Shout out to Our Revolution in New Jersey.
South Jersey, but...
South Jersey. I mean, it's part of New Jersey, but okay.
Don't quibble, Sam. You'll lose.
Something interesting also happened in Britain. Theresa May agreed to a debate. Like this is kind of big because when the election began, it seems like she didn't want to debate at all. I mean, she had a 25-point lead in the polls. Now, people have done some computations from the local elections, and it looks like the Tories only have about an 11-point lead, and that will shrink when the turnout turns up for the parliamentary election.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Appreciate the call.
Yep.
Bye. Calling from an 812 area code. Who's this?
Hello?
Hello. Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Where are you calling from?
It's Doug from Indiana.
Hey, Doug, what's on your mind?
Well, I noticed, I don't know, I haven't been able to hear your show live, but had you talked about the Trump's putting out a thing for a voter fraud commission being headed by Chris Kobach?
Yeah, I got it right here, actually. I mentioned it at the top of the show. It is a, you never know with these things, but it is a supposed voter fraud commission. It is going to be, like you say, co-chaired or vice-chaired by Chris Kobach. Folks should remember, Chris Kobach, many people suspect that he was the author, or at least broad outlines, of the immigration ban, of the Muslim ban. He is a former Kansas, or the sitting, I should say, Kansas Secretary of State. He is about as backwards as they come in this country. Racist, bigoted, has worked overtime both to be anti-immigrant and disenfranchise voters. Vice President Mike Pence will chair this group, but it's basically Chris Kobach, and it's supposedly going to deal with the integrity of federal elections, including improper registration, improper voting, fraudulent registrations, fraudulent voting, and then lastly, voter suppression, which of course probably means investigating those 3 Black Panthers who prevented people from voting or yelled at people when they were voting 10 years ago in Philadelphia or something. So this is, people were very concerned about this when Donald Trump was talking about the election results, that this, in starting this commission, that it would be basically an institutional mechanism to continue voter suppression above and beyond the Supreme Court. And we got this clip up here. This is a picture of Donald Trump hanging in the White House, apparently, is this picture of a map that has all the red counties he won and the few blue counties that he lost. And I suspect even that picture in itself, just becomes an excuse by people who just want to suppress votes, that it's really, his pet project. But this is really a Republican project.
Right. And I'm in one of those blue counties in a red state. So speaking of that, I can't actually go to my congressman's town halls because the guy moved up from Tennessee to run for our district, and he never has them. I don't even know if he's ever actually in his district.
Is there any is there Democratic representatives anywhere near you in any contiguous congressional district?
I'd have to go up to Indianapolis probably in order for that to happen.
Well, I mean, how far is that? What I'm suggesting is you invite that Democratic congressman to a town hall in your district.
Mm-hmm.
Have them come and explain the bill. That's what Sean Maloney, I think it was, Sean Patrick Maloney did in New York. He went to the neighboring district, which is John Fasso's district, and he gave a talk about health care. Do that. Set it up, invite the guy.
I actually call offices, which you can't call his local office because, like him, they're never there.
Well, try and get the Democrat to come down.
Well, and then I call my senators too, which one is Joe Donnelly, which kind of weak-chinned as a Democrat, but I called and gave him support of some of the strong statements he said recently. But
good.
Yeah.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks for the call.
Mm-hmm.
Bye. Does not sound like he wants to do that.
Maybe he hasn't seen how effective it's been in the.
It's been very effective. I love Sarah Palin. In terms of austerity, I like to think about it this way. In business, there's nothing wrong with debt financing because it's an investment and belief in your company. Actually, in many ways, it's seen as a good thing. with austerity, I can't help but look at the commitment to cutting spending like on healthcare as an admission the American people aren't worth the investment. It's a good point. Bar Chame. The interviews are what make the Majority Report a high-level independent media organization. It allows listeners to have progressive discussion based on fact and knowledge, not opinion and speculation. Can we give Sam and the rest of the crew a shofar, or at least Sam some extra shekels? Well, we'll do this. It's very Jewy today. Thank you. Joseph Ballin. All this talk about Russian ties, but no talk about any other country's ties to Trump? I think Real News contributor Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson stated that the reason he has so much Goldman Sachs in his cabinet is because of Israeli financing. Also, Jimmy Reefercake made me into the newest blogger for allthehypocrisy.com. Check it out. The Nuclear Negroid. The last 2 minutes of the Marcy Wheeler discussion was so important to hear. It sounds like a special prosecutor could be a win for Trump. Did I hear that right? I think she is concerned that a special prosecutor may not be an upgrade from the USA in Virginia. She might be in favor of a special commission, which could run a parallel investigation. But, I'll keep an eye out if she updates that perspective. Jesse Waters. Wait, is he back on television?
I don't know.
He
Yeah,
is.
his vacation wasn't terribly long, actually.
He had an actual vacation, huh? Can I just say, I have to say, apropos of nothing, a friend of mine last night showed me, and I can't believe we missed this during the campaign, or maybe you caught it, Matt, but Errol Morris interviewed Trump back in the 80s to talk about Citizen Kane. And that couple of minutes is one of the most bizarre, because it's very Trump. In fact, Trump is clearly then a bit more stable than he is now, but it's that classic, like, there's a few moments of like, I mean, there's things you learn when you have money. Like there's a couple of like, it's kind of lucid. And then there's also just like, I mean, Rosebud, it's like something that people, they think about it. It's a big name. I mean, maybe perhaps if it had not been Rosebud, people wouldn't think about it in the same way.
He had never seen the movie.
No, I actually think he did.
Oh,
because then he had some.
He just can't register the significance of that.
Can't. No. It was even more simple. It was more primitive. Like he literally was just saying like that the selection of that name specifically. Like maybe if the name of the if it wasn't named Rosebud, the movie wouldn't have been as interesting to people. Maybe it's just that word selection. Like that.
If it was Daffodil Stem, no one would think about it.
Like that's what he was really interested in. And then he had
the
some
best
great.
sled you've ever been on. Though.
And he's like. And perhaps you get separated, you get isolated from your wife. That's certainly something that can happen. Although she still is going to enjoy many benefits of being married to you.
Jesus. Bullprog. Instead of priming the pump, let's get to timing the Trump. And by my watch, time's up. Anybody? Hello? If you hate that joke, I stole it from Kindler. On another note, I've been feeling Majority Report doesn't properly imply enough credential. Maybe considered adding reasonable or sane to the title and possibly doctor or PhD to your names. Chris Lapaco, did you hear that Trump is going to release Hillary's concession phone call audio to celebrate 6 months in office? For real, yes, I did hear that. It wasn't 6 months in office. What I heard was 6 months from the election. So that would be in June 7th. Right? Or June 8th or something? I heard that. Yeah, they had announced that the other day. How insane.
I don't even think that, like...
That's a gift for the historians.
That, like, I don't even... I mean, I literally cannot imagine any other figure in the world doing that.
What are you doing? Are you going somewhere?
I've been standing up and stretching out, but that one I was genuinely doubled over.
Ivana Tinkle, Betsy DeVos giving a speech on accomplishment as graduating is emptied to a trust fund, free lunch taking. Airhead, who has been given respect because people want her money her whole life, and she gets a taste of the real world where you earn the country's respect instead of flashing Benjamins. Get used to it, you worthless human being. I'm from Michigan, so I can tell you she is a total biatch.
I like that. I am.
One more, Nick. Trump's approval is at 36%. Do you think it's going to go below 30% after the firing of Comey? Also, I think it will drop a point or two, but I don't think, when you start getting around 33%, 32%, there's just not much to penetrate there.
Mr. Trump, would you like to personally defraud me on behalf of a Russian bank? Anything I could do.
He would have to rename Christmas Navidad for some of his
I think that's
followers
true.
Yeah, that might be
Also,
you can steal my money.
As far as I can think of the one press conference Trump has given independently, is this normal amount of press conferences to give for a president? It depends. We've had presidents who've gone a long time without a press conference. Giz Garzley, are the Russians really our enemy, Sam? Well, are they really our enemy? Well, I don't know that I've said that but they're certainly a rival. I mean,
we have some conflicting interests in the world with them.
Yes, I would say that. It's kind of troubling to me that we suddenly take statements like he talked to the Russians as ipso facto nefarious and portending something negative. Listen, I don't know if you heard that interview, but I thought I made it very clear that it would have been perfectly legitimate for Flynn to have said to investigators, hey, this is our policy agenda is to develop a better relationship with the Russians. We are not being explicit about it to the American public because we just don't think they're there yet. And I even cited the Iran deal as a comparison, which I think I am completely in favor of. Yeah. So look, the point isn't that he talked to the Russians. The point is that, and if you cannot see this, and substitute the word Russians for, I don't know, Venezuelans, if it makes you feel better, or Saudis, for that matter.
Well, no, let's
but
run.
There is clearly been a concerted effort on behalf of people in the Trump organization to hide these things. And the only explanation, which I just said, that would make any sense would be we have a long-term policy agenda that we don't feel the American public is ready for, and we think we would pay a political price for it. And to believe that is, I don't know, I think just delusional.
It's also, and also let's actually play it out even more. If the Obama administration, which pursued the Iran deal, obviously, and obviously I supported that very strongly too. If it came out that at the same time there was some odd contributions from like Iranian banks and Iranian political entities to the Obama campaign, and Susan Rice and John Kerry were meeting in ways that might have overlapped with the campaign or something, I would still in fact totally support the policy, but I would say, if that's not something that's totally made up on Breitbart, which it probably would be, I would say, yeah, that's a legitimate thing to look at. It's just the only difference here is there's no policy upshot other than, I guess, like what Exxon wants to do in terms of drilling. So I don't know why you're so worried about defending that.
U.S. talks to all kind of scumbag countries, and people don't freak out like this. Well, that's also not the issue, because we have much closer relationships and cooperation with some scumbag countries, which is a different issue. I would rather we didn't do that. But there's an ongoing attempt to hide these contacts, and it is suspicious. Are there elements in the U.S. body politic that want to have a more adversarial relationship with the Russians? Yes. Do I support them? No, not necessarily. But do I think Russia is they have United States interests? That's their primary focus? No, of course not.
We're peace-loving people, so only want to protect human rights, Syria, and help America move to sustainable energy policy. But everyone wants war with us. Totally unfair. This is fake news.
So it's just as slippery answers that raise that flag. I get that. Yeah. I don't know if I would call them slippery. I would say there's been a concerted effort to hide what they're doing. They just fired 3, I mean, I think Donald Trump is a corrupt guy. And it just so happens that Russia is one of the maybe the only institutional relationship he has that is corrupt. It's conceivable. If they were, I don't know, if everybody in this administration was meeting with Wells Fargo secretly.
Well, that's the kind of corruption that everybody can just do out in the open in this country.
That's true. Sam, have you or Michael seen the video of evolutionary psychology quack God Sad provide his expert opinion to the Canadian Senate Committee on Bill C-16? It's a bill that adds gender identity and expression to the list of prohibited grounds of discrimination. It's a good example of the exact type of pseudoscience the alt-right would use to legitimize themselves. Assad basically states that trans people are crying wolf in terms of their victimization. As a side note, this insufferable douche refers to himself as the Godfather.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but he really sucks. And a listener a while ago asked me to debate him, and because he is, smarter than Sargon, and I said yes, and Saad would not come through.
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
Sod father pussed out.
Sounds more like the Sod not father.
Sounds more like Fredo.
I keep sending my wife pro flowers for Mother's Day under the name of her current and former lovers. One of them has to be the father. Sam's de minimis. Oh boy, here we go. Sam, there's one tiny little itty-bitty turtle-headed point you missed in my question, suggesting we would draw attention from Trump's daily outrages and instead thrust our members into the greater outrages being consummated in our names, such as I mentioned. You said you don't know what my political agenda is in asking this, but you're being premature. I'm asking for the unspoken basic principles of our society to become widely understood, to return to daily consciousness the invisible history of the ruling classes that gives us these acceptable debates that we have every day in the media, and often even on this otherwise potent show. Seen in this light, all of these things we don't talk about are much bigger loads than all the orange-skinned angels dancing on the head of Donald Trump's penis. Any politics that does not fully take in the basic tropes of capitalism, imperialism, and propaganda will only serve to solidify and engorge those very things. I call out liberal America because they are supposed to be the enlightened ones, but as I fear they are just as soft-serve as Sam's you-know-what. As long as we keep spilling our seed all over the latest distraction, but never planting ourselves even 2 inches deep within the history defines us, I fear none of us are in for a happy ending. Look.
Come on. At this point, I think we just have to agree.
That's pretty good.
Really good.
Yeah, I mean, I get your point. I mean, I get... Do you feel somewhat shafted because... I mean, look, I think the reality is that on this show, we try to balance it. I mean, if you look at over the past, 3 months, the shows that we've had, we've had a huge mix of things. I mean, I don't know, just off the top of my head, we had someone discussing the history of capitalism in the university. I mean, that was a couple of weeks ago, I guess. We had, I can't even remember what we had this week. But I think we're doing both. And I think to ignore, what goes on a daily basis, I think it's just silly. First of all, I'm interested in it. I think it has relevance to our politics. I think it has relevance to the future of the planet. And... there's a lot of news that goes on. I mean, this is the show is what it is. I try and balance those things, and I think, relatively speaking, I think we do a pretty good job, of that. You may have other shows that you think are that do it better, but I mean, let me know what they are. Bad as a society. Henry Kissinger looks like someone Zaza trying to force feed them pierogies from Thanksgiving. Danny, Sam, you don't actually believe for a second Comey told Trump he's not under investigation. At best, he said nothing to Trump. I mean, I think it's possible he said at the beginning, like, you are not under investigation. You are not the subject of an investigation. But I don't know what that means in the context of this. Everyone around you might be. We're looking at your business dealings, but only to get clarity on what's going on everywhere else. I mean, I think it's conceivable he said that to Trump, particularly early on. I don't know. I really don't. Freedom for Palestine. But I got to tell you, if you're nervous about something, you know, there's such a quality to all this. It's like you think you're going to get busted for something that they're not investigating. Right? You know what I mean? Like that dynamic. Like I'm not worried. Like I think, you know, Trump could be like, of course I'm not a Russian spy. It's just everything else I've done. If they dig around looking for that, they're going to find out that stuff.
If they're rooting around, they'll find out about money laundering.
Honestly.
Getting hand jobs from my daughter. I don't want people doing that.
Freedom for Palestine. I crashed on my bike the other day, and thank God I was wearing a helmet, or else right now I'd believe Trump fired Comey because he was too mean to Hillary months ago. I hope you're feeling better. I got doored once in New York City. I always wore a helmet, but I went right over the door. Yeah, I was going in between, you know, cars waiting at a light and then cars parked, and I got doored by someone coming out of like a town car. And the first thing she did... What was the damage?
Oh, sorry.
I hurt my arm for a while. Nothing was broken, but my arm was pretty badly hurt. But the first thing she does, as I am like literally on the ground, I had gone over her door. The bike had a little bit, you know, got the front tire got bent. And the first thing she does is start yelling at me like, it's not my fault. And I literally was like semi-dazed, and I was just like, please just get away from me. Like,
right, exactly.
Like you're yelling at me. I'm trying to like... People come over to help me, and
my fault. That's a Trump voter.
Bookmark the Amazon link. Sam, I think you're right about leaks about to go crazy. Don't forget that Trump went to the CIA, gave his dumb speech. I think leaks increased bigly after that. He's doing the same with the FBI soon, but he's a few months more insane than the CIA one. Your Amazon link is great. I find it best to just save it as a favorite so I can go right to it. Tulski for cake. Out of all white guys who want to be black, Michael has got to be the least cool. Smart guy, but pathetic. Chris Burdick.
Wait, who wrote that?
Oh, it's a Tulski for cake. Tulski for cake. Chris Burdick, did you hear that someone bought the domain hailhydra.com and redirected to the official White House page of Trump? Hydra is the evil shadow government from Marvel's comics, and Hail Hydra is how its agents greet one another. Amy Fair, why did the historically black college invite Devos? That's a good question, but it also sounds like the beginning of a joke. Calling from a 773 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? $773.
Oh, are you talking to me?
What's your name?
Hi, I'm Karen from Chicago.
Hi, Karen. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the whole Hillary-Bernie thing. I caught on to your show about 2 years ago. I never heard of your show before. Then I started watching about 2 years ago, catching your podcast. So I enjoy the show now, but I'm not technically a progressive.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. How did you come upon the show?
Oh, on YouTube.
Okay. So you're a centrist. You came upon the show.
Yes, I'm left centrist. I float in between there, centrist, left centrist. Came upon the show because I just started watching a lot of videos about politics a few years ago. And what I wanted to ask was, all of the Hillary bashing that comes across from a lot of the progressives, I kind of don't understand where that comes from. I was a Hillary supporter last year. Voted for her in the primary and the general election. I was also a Hillary supporter in 2008. I voted for her in the primary against Barack. And the reason I did that, even though, I'm a lifetime Illinoisan, so, they're both good options. But I voted for Hillary because of the experience factor. Even though I'm an Illinoisan, I really didn't know a whole lot about Barack. He didn't have a whole lot of history, for me at least. And I felt there was, a lot to know about Hillary. She had a lot of experience. I liked her. That's why I supported her back in '08. I voted for her over Bernie last November because in Bernie, I saw a big wave of socialism hitting me in the face. And I know he says he's not a socialist, and progressives say they're not socialists, generally speaking. But with Bernie, I saw a reincarnation of the Carter years. And I am your age, Sam.
Yep.
And I remember as a child living through the Carter years. I was young, child, preteen, living through the Carter years. And I remember thinking, even as a child, that his presidency was a disaster. He was just too far left for me. And so was Bernie. And so that's why I went with Hillary. I also loved where her experience came from. She has state government experience from when she was hanging around Bill in the Arkansas gubernatorial administration there. And then she had White House experience also through Bill. She has Senate experience, the State Department, all of that. Go ahead.
Well, okay. Well, I think I agree with you in terms of she had a tremendous amount of experience. I can tell you that in 2008, I was not terribly overly excited by either one in the primary. I think for a long time I was contemplating Edwards, to be honest with you, in 2008, because I felt that I didn't like the economic people that Hillary had around her. I didn't want the same people that were around Bill Clinton. And that was sort of basically my feeling at the time. There's a lot that you said there, but I will say that I think there's a lot of people who, I don't know what you mean by socialist, and I want to ask you that in a second, but I can tell you that Jimmy Carter's policies, I think your perception of them being to the left, I think, is pretty incorrect. He was definitely to the left of where Ronald Reagan was, but Ronald Reagan was far to the right of where, let's say, Jerry Ford was. Carter pushed, the big thing that Carter pushed, really, it seems to me, that was you could be considered, I guess, to the left, was the idea of solar and the idea that we should get off of oil and whatnot, which in now looks just more like rational policy rather than a political ideology. But I don't know what he wasn't particularly supportive of universal health care. He was. He deregulated. A lot of our deregulation started with Jimmy Carter. He wasn't particularly, pro-union. I think it's just I think Reagan moved things so far to the right that Carter may have looked like that. But what parts of socialism that you think that Bernie espoused do you have a problem with? Because I think, by the end of the primary campaign, Clinton had adopted a lot of Bernie Sanders' policies, maybe, a lot of 3/4 of Bernie Sanders' policies, I would say. She moved on the minimum wage. She moved on. She went from debt-free college to some free college for people with a certain means test. She moved on expansion of Social Security. I can't think of any. Those are two pretty big ones. I mean, the three big ones, it seems to me. But what did you find problematic about Bernie Sanders' socialism? I mean, what does that word mean to you?
Well, let me make two comments. One based on what you just mentioned about Hillary moving towards Bernie during her campaign last year. That's also something that I had an issue with. I was actually kind of disappointed with Hillary that she had done that. I thought she was moving too far left as a strategy to try to gain some support from the farther left, to try to gain some support, or at least have herself be perceived better by progressives. I felt during the campaign that Hillary was forced in her own strategy to go left to kind of compete with Bernie, who was becoming very popular. I don't even think that's really where she comes from in her heart of hearts. I think
that's probably why people
would naturally go that way.
I think that's probably why people, on the left had, bashed her. It was because of what you've just said. I mean, you just have a different sort of orientation.
That's part of it.
What's problematic about those policies to you?
Well, for me, it's the whole the extremism of Bernie's campaign. Free college for everybody. That was like I had a big problem with that.
Why?
Well,
wait a second. It's not.
Level,
hold on for 1 second. It's not free college for everybody, right? It is a free option for everybody. So not everybody would go to a free college. It's just that everyone, if they wanted, would have the option to going to a college that was free. Not all of their, Okay. I couldn't go to Harvard and say, like, I'm going to take the free college option here. I would have to pay. Right?
I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, now you understand that 50 or 60 years ago, we had that in this country, at least in, I don't know, half a dozen to a dozen states. To go to a New York university or a California university in the 1950s was virtually free. I mean, there's other states, Michigan, but
my personal stance on that is that I'm just not for that. I'm not for taxpayer money giving people the option of going to college for free. An option or just a few schools or whatever. I'm not for that. I'm for very, very low interest loans. I'm for extremely low interest loans. I'm for loans that have maybe a
Well, why?
Why am I for low interest loans?
No. I mean, I understand why you'd be for low interest loans, but I'm saying why do you have a problem with free higher education? What do you think? Do you have a problem with the free high school?
I think no, because when you're in grade school and you're in high school, you're still basically a child. Once you're graduated from high school, you're 18. Now you're technically an adult. For me, I think that college should be earned. I'm not a free handout person, which is why I'm a centrist.
Are you a homeowner?
And I feel, yes, I am.
Now, what do you feel about the mortgage interest tax deduction?
Well, my home is paid off. I don't have a mortgage, so I'm unaffected.
Did you ever have a mortgage, or would you buy it in cash?
I did not. I worked from the time I got out of high school. I wanted to work during high school, but it was the Reagan years, and the job market was atrocious here in Chicago when I was in high school. So it was very hard for me to even get a job. I held garbage, little dinky jobs when I was in high school. I worked part-time when I was in college. I sacrificed a lot. I budgeted a lot. I took personal loans from family, and basically I purchased my home outright. I was very fortunate in that. But
Yeah.
it wasn't a handout. It was a personal loan from family. I repaid that.
Well,
Everything
but you
I
understand.
I have worked hard for. And
No,
I've
I'm not.
earned.
I don't doubt that. But you understand that having access to credit is a huge benefit. Even if you pay it back, just having access to credit, right? Because you couldn't go to the bank and get that deal.
I agree with you 100% on that. I agree with you 100%. I've got a daughter in college right now, and we've had to work on building her credit just so that she could have a credit card.
Right. I mean, so the idea, I mean, having access to credit, the vast majority of Americans don't have that opportunity. The vast majority don't have the ability
Right.
to go and get credit, to get that stuff. Now, if I hear you, you would work on the banking systems and such that you would
absolutely
you would provide those low cost loans and whatnot. I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, I think it's just, it's a matter of preference. I think I would make the argument that that having a free public college option would not be nearly as expensive. And it sounds to me like on principle you have a problem with it. I'll tell you, it would lower the cost of other colleges because there would be a viable, in the same way that if you had a public option with private insurance, it would be helpful. Do you have a problem with single payer health insurance?
No, I do not.
Yeah, I mean, I think and that is, that's socialistic at the very least. You don't have a problem with Social Security.
Absolutely. And you know what? You're right about that. You're right about that as well. But I don't have a problem with that because that involves health care. For me, health care and education are two completely different entities. For me, education is something that should be earned to a degree. Healthcare is something that is a basic human right. But I just wanted to get back to my original point, which was the Hillary bashing thing. All of the stuff that I hear from a lot of progressives about how she should just stay in hiding and no one wants to hear from you anymore and go away and all of that stuff. It's very upsetting for me to hear that kind of stuff because she has a right to.
Well, of course she does.
First of all, she hasn't been in anybody's face ever since she lost.
Ever
since she lost,
of course
she's
she
been
does.
in nobody's face.
But wait
she
a second.
hasn't been intrusive.
Do you remember, you and I are the
treat
same
her
age.
like,
Do you remember Michael Dukakis? Do you remember what people said about Michael Dukakis? I mean, Michael Dukakis, lost to a sitting vice president. I don't think he should have lost.
Well, he had that scandal. Where he was very well. He came across soft on crime because of that guy that went on that.
Yes, he was attacked with a racist attack. He was basic. Yes, the Willie Horton ads. He was smeared, and they used racism. There was no scandal there. There was no scandal. He had a program that exists.
Well, he came across soft on crime. For me, that comes across as a political scandal when you come across.
Well, but it wasn't a scandal. It was, he had the same parole program that existed in probably, 15 states at the time, and it wasn't a scandal.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that if you remember how toxic Michael Dukakis became the next day, and compare that to the way that people are reacting to Clinton, who, look, depending on your perspective on this, right, she lost to one of the, should have been one of the easiest candidates to beat in the history of the country. Or you could also say, there was also Cuomo, the Comey letter and whatnot. But my point is that to the idea of, Mondale. I had a Mondale biography after he lost. People look at me like I came from Mars to have that book. It happens. It happens. I think, frankly, she's been, she's been, treated by the press as with no less derision or no more derision, I should say, than most people who lose an election. And, you know, and well, not twice. She lost the primary, but I mean, she lost the presidential election. And, you know, there are a lot of people who disagree with her policies. And there was also, you know, she ran a bad campaign. I mean, I think that's,
yes, I would say that her campaign was faulty. Yes.
Yes, and she ran a bad campaign in 2008 against Obama, and she didn't make those corrections. There was a lot of arrogance involved in the campaign, which I think also leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. And I will say this, the staff that she had in her campaign reflect, I think, a frustration that people have had with the professional Democrats for a long time, which is that level of arrogance, which is because, you know, there was a lot of people not necessarily on that staff who were basically saying, you know, don't do this. And, you know, at one point, you got to take responsibility of that. If you're head of a campaign, if you're the candidate, you got to take responsibility for that. But look, I got to jump. I appreciate the call. Thanks for listening. And
all right, thank you.
All right, we're going to work on getting you to come around on this whole free college option.
Okay.
Oh,
no, maybe not.
No, maybe that was Hillary Clinton herself. That's a very Hillary Clinton laugh.
All right.
There.
I'm sorry. We don't have time for more calls. We're way late. But let me take a couple more IMs and then we'll get out of here. Matt.
D.
He's still in the White House. Dolink. Matt Ostori, Assistant Director, FBI, told Prebis, New York Story, Russia ties were BS. Now that assistant now in line to lead Russia ties investigation. Yes, we're talking about McCabe. Daily newsletter from Brian Stetler. Reliable sources summarizes what's happening in the media. Yesterday was full of great links. Russia and Comey. Maddow, especially informative, dug deeper last night. Did you catch that Comey called Trump crazy after he claimed that President Obama wiretapped him? Yes. Michael.
Rachel Maddow, F. E.
Just give me a second. All right. The idea is not to speed it up.
Oh,
the
okay.
idea is to get to how do I choose between the 100 people who are left.
Pardon me. This is Rachel Maddow.
Okay, we're going to need a
Russia,
different one. There's no F. There's no F.
Russia, E. R for
Edgewater Joe.
Russia.
For Christ's sake, the more panicked Trump becomes, the more he devolves into sounding like he's doing a perfect mashup impersonation of himself.
That's
the
so
whole
true.
thing, you sound like sassy Trump meets drunk uncle meets Baldwin meets yours and Michael sloppy Trumps all at the same time. It's funny, scary, and cringeworthy in equal parts. It is true. So-called doctor. I subject myself to Fox News while on business trips, and on a trip earlier this week, I witnessed an exchange on Fox and Friends I wanted to share with you. The trio were discussing how Tiffany Trump will be attending Georgetown Law School, and Brian Kilmeade mentioned how rough it is to get a dorm room at Georgetown. Suggested that perhaps Tiffany should live at the White House. Ainsley Earhart said she was pretty sure the president's daughter would be able to get a dorm room at Georgetown, but Kilmeade immediately responded, quite upset and shocked, that this is America and we're all treated the same. The awkward silence which followed was priceless. We should try and find that. Matt.
C.
Colin Doucette. I think Jeff Sessions might want to ban Jews from gambling in casinos because they have an unfair genetic advantage. Michael.
The Jew, A.
And Sometimery. If I do cool cover of La Poupée that doesn't suck, would you guys consider using it? Thinking accordion, ukulele, Casio, keyboard. We would definitely, and I can already hear saying no. You know what? We would definitely. I can't say we would use it every time, but we would play it at the very least once, and then maybe we get stuck in Jags. But yes, mailman. I bought a 5-pound bag of the Majority Report blend from Just Coffee, and I'm enjoying the first pot now. I am an insufferably obnoxious coffee snob, but this blend and roast are solid. The MR blend will be my everyday brew from here on out. Best to you, a mailman. Sweet. Thank you. Matt.
B.
Bingo Mosquito. 25th Amendment is strictly a temporary solution. Impeachment and conviction is the only permanent solution. The 25th Amendment allows the president to repeatedly petition to return to office, which requires Congress vote each time. Winky the Anus Sam, is it better if I contribute directly to you or through Patreon? Also, I love you real big. I just become a member is best, but if Patreon's easier for you, do that. We're trying to replace that revenue from YouTube. Michael.
Q.
Very good. We don't have one, but yes.
Oh, okay. All right. N.
N. Okay. Interesting.
Oh,
Not
well,
safe to drink. That was the biggest penis joke I've ever heard, and it wasn't too hard to take it all in. Yeah. Subclusunatic. If you had a Republican congressman, what would you call him and ask him? Would you urge him to demand an independent investigator? Yes, I would call them and I would say, you are too close to Trump. You are too close to Trump. This man is corrupt and his policies are bad. You're too close to Trump. And how could you on this healthcare thing? You disgust me. And I'm a lifelong Republican vet. I'm a lifelong Republican vet.
Yes, and I also served in Israel, and I'm also involved with my local church.
That's right. I'm a Christian Zionist.
I'm a Christian Zionist Republican veteran. And how dare you, sir?
I'm sick of all the handouts, but this has gone on too much.
Too much.
Matt.
H.
Hypnotic Gene, what do you think is the difference between leaking and whistleblowing? Whistleblowing is actually a specific thing, and it is when you are providing information to the public because there's no other recourse, and it is something that the public has a that the public should know about their government. Leaking is actually just, I mean, you would do that if you're a whistleblower, but it is the nature of the material that's being leaked, I think, that makes the difference. Michael, your final pick.
D.
D again. I'm going to have another letter from you. M. Max in Oakland. Gad Saad is not an academic. He's a marketing guy that happens to have a degree in questionable science called evolutionary psychology. He's also beloved by David Pakman, David Rubin, and the rest of pretend liberals. I bet. And the final IM of the day, ladies and gentlemen, Gulfstream 2. I watched that New Jersey town hall. Representative kept saying Obamacare was failing, insurance companies leaving. No one knew about Rubio's poison pill, which would have been great if someone could have pointed out. Would you please explain it again? Rubio's poison pill was to remove the funding for risk corridors, which was to allow insurance companies a couple of years to adjust to how much it was going to cost them to provide insurance for people in the exchanges who may or may not be sicker as a whole than they initially thought. This was an important part of the Affordable Care Act to make it basically a soft landing for these insurance companies who had no way to predict what the cost would be. Once that was gone, it made it much less possible for the insurance companies to figure out what the formula was for them to what to charge. And so they couldn't be profitable, and they left. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. shifted in